how you interact with SaaS will change in two ways. Instead of SaaS apps becoming a place where you take action, SaaS apps will move more and more to a place where you are either reviewing or getting insights. Number two, instead of clicking buttons all over the place, it's going to become a lot easier just to do things as you do in normal conversation language. Really, product management is about having customer empathy and understanding your customer and your domain deeply. If you try to hit too many different segments of customers that have different needs, your product is going to be a hodgepodge. One of the common things in pricing is you will usually start high on price and then you will bring it down because you know you can bring it down. There's always an option to bring it down, but there's rarely an option to go up significantly.
One of my product advisors would say many years ago, it doesn't take a genius to reduce prices. Like the really hard thing is to raise them. So you pretty much want to start it higher and then give yourself the option.
Hey, this is Carlos, CEO at Product School and your host on the Product Podcast. Today's guest is Diya Jolly, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Xero. Xero is a leading accounting software serving over 4.5 million businesses across 180 countries. It has a market cap of approximately $9 billion and over $1.2 billion in annual revenue. Diya has led both consumer and enterprise products, previously serving as the head of monetization at YouTube and CPO at Okta. In our conversation, we cover the key aspects involved in scaling complex platforms. First, bringing AI capabilities into non-AI native products without slamming AI on top of an existing UI. Next, building a super agent that orchestrates specialized sub-agents to autonomously execute specific tasks. Then, finding the maximum price users are willing to pay for your product without sacrificing user delight. Also, introducing humans in the loop to ensure 100% precision and prevent LLM hallucinations. And finally, enabling APIs to power a global platform while providing hyperlocal flexibility across different markets. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Product Podcast, Diya.
Thank you for having me, Carlos. It's fantastic to be here.
I've been tracking you for a long time. We have like hundreds of common connections on LinkedIn, so I'm glad that this is happening.
Yes, I'm excited to be here too. We have a lot of common friends.
So I see that you were a product executive at YouTube. The latest
Yes.
role there was as a head of monetization there, then
Yes.
CPO at Okta, and now the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Xero.
Yes.
So let's start with some of the kind of like very different products. YouTube, more like consumer type of business. I can imagine Okta is more like large enterprise. Xero is more in the SMB space. So what are some of those core fundamentals that stay true across all three?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think really product management is about having customer empathy and understanding your customer and your domain deeply. And that remains true no matter where you are. So in YouTube, it was about understanding both the advertisers and the users that use you. Understanding the users is easy because you yourself are a user, right? But understanding advertisers takes some work because you're not an advertiser. Same thing at Okta. You need to understand your customers deeply, whether it's a CISO or a CIO, and same thing at Xero. So basically, I think if you understand your customers deeply, that's one key tenet of product management. The second key tenet is then being able to take that understanding and convert it into a vision for a product that is obviously technically feasible, but also something that adds value beyond what they could have imagined, because they are not the technologists, obviously. They don't understand what technology can do. They are not looking at the product as a whole. So you can probably find ways to give value to them, whether that's depending on what your product does, whether that's more time back, whether that's ability to grow their business, whether that's more revenue for them, whatever the case might be. So I think those are the core, that's what I would say the core tenet is. How do you understand your customers deeply? How do you understand the jobs that they need to get done? How do you understand their goals, their daily workflows, their challenges, and then convert that into a software solution using your technical know-how and your ability to take pain points and convert them into a software process?
I would like to go deeper on that because when I hear you talk about understanding customers deeply, of course, like my mind goes like, yeah. And in a company like YouTube, I'm a huge
Yeah.
user. I'm like, yeah, I'm a user as well. So I can do this better than if I was doing an accounting software product like Xero,
Yeah.
right? So what does, and also at the scale, right? Like if you're at a large company now in the thousands of people, it's very easy for some executives to remove themselves from the reality of things. So how do you make sure that there is still a way for you, a conduit, if you will, to really understand and touch your users?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic question. So I think when you're in the consumer world, there are a couple of things, right? Like you yourself are a user of the product, so you have opinions. Your friends are users of the product, etc. And then in the consumer world, data, because tons and tons and tons of people use your product if it's successful. If it's not successful, you even then you try with where the drop off is, what kind of features they like, and you can go fast. You can iterate. You can launch a bunch of features and see if it works or it doesn't work, right? Consumer is very different. When you come into B2B, I think it's a little bit of a different game, and B2B enterprise is a little different is a little bit more different than B2B in Xero. In Xero, we're serving business owners. So if you take two sides of our equation, we're serving accountants and bookkeepers, where we can actually go have a conversation, right? Like we have a sales team that talks to them. We can go talk to them. We have advisory boards, etc. And we can go ask them, hey, how are you using things? What do you like? What don't you like, right? You can actually go and spend time with them. Like I recently had my team spend a whole day with an accountant and bookkeeper learning what they do, how they do it, so that you can get empathy, right? When I first started in advertising, I actually went and worked for a advertiser, and then helped them for a week work with their workflow so that I can understand the business deeply, right? I can get more empathy. So I think when you are on the side of enterprise, in some cases you have data. So we have a lot of data on what our businesses like and don't like, but you end up relying on conversations also to understand their daily lives. And then there's nothing more important than actually being able to stand in their shoes, whether it is um, working with them for a week, whether it is being a product person that does customer support for a week to understand where the pain points, etc. are. That's what you would use.
I like that point, especially for B2B business, to not be used as an excuse. Say, well,
Yes,
because it's a B2B company or because I'm not the specific customer for this product, then I'm just going to rely on it. I think it's really powerful to find ways to still use the product and connect with the people using it. And that reminds me of a story of a CPO at Uber. I had him on the podcast, and he would say how he would make mandatory that all of their PMs would be drivers for some time
exactly.
to really
Exactly.
connect.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the same thing. You have to get close to the product. You have to use your product. I mean, I have demo orgs I use all the time, right? And whenever somebody says, oh, there's this really cool startup that's doing X, first thing I do is go set myself up. And the next thing we do is like we talk to our customers. So we have both a small business advisory council that we talk to. We have a accountant bookkeeper council we talk to. So you have to stay close to them and understand their world and pain point in whatever way.
So that leads me to the next point. I know you are big on making decisions with imperfect data or incomplete
Yes.
data.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
So I'd say, Carlos, there are two types of decisions. One decision where if you make the decision, it is very hard to reverse it. An example I will give you is, for example, if you are deciding whether you want to price a new product at a certain price, um, if you price it too low, it's generally very hard to then go price it higher. With one-way doors, you want as much data as possible, right? And then you want to say, okay, um, w- are there ways to make this one-way door two-way doors, right? In case I'm wrong, to keep optionality open. So one of the common things in pricing is you will usually start high on price and then you will bring it down because you know you can bring it down. There's always an option to bring it down, but there's rarely an option to go up significantly. So
One
those
of
are the
my
one-way, two-way doors. Sorry,
one
go
of
ahead.
my product advisors would say many years ago, it doesn't take a genius to reduce prices. Like the really hard thing
Ex-
is to raise them. So you pretty
Exactly.
much want to start it higher and then give yourself the option.
Exactly. Exactly. The other types of decisions are two-way door decisions, in which case you're actually better off just like instead of sitting and debating, you're better off just like experimenting, launching. So I'm a big fan of experiments, right? Like where you can experiment, just experiment, and then course correct and make things better. So those are generally most of the decisions you take on a daily basis. 80 to 90% of them are two-way doors if you structure the solution properly, right? You have to think about structuring the solution properly, and then you do iterative milestones where you experiment and get feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're referring to the famous the two-way door leadership principle that Amazon
Yes.
coined, right? And I think
Yes.
that's really powerful, and I used it a lot because a lot of the times, what seems like a final decision to define the future is really not, right?
Yes.
Like it's more of a smaller step in one direction with the option to reverse or adjust
Exactly.
if needed.
Exactly. And then go back to like it product and tech should be developed iteratively, right? Any big bang has the risk of any one small decision being wrong and any one small step being wrong. So those two get combined very easily.
Now, the challenge that I see with this approach is that, especially in larger organizations, you get a lot of other people. There's the committees, there's the other people. And at some point, it's like it's way too many. So, where do you draw that line between consensus versus conviction?
Ah, yes, that is always a challenge in a big company. So I think what we do is we are, and I've had this philosophy for a while. You have to decide um, for each initiative you have, for lack of a better word, or each product you have or product feature you have, who are the eventual decision makers and how you will hold them accountable for making the right decision. And that goes in, and then you have to make sure that the organization knows it, number one. So, for example, most companies are struggling with this today. AI and AI development really goes across, like it's a horizontal that cuts across all your product features. So, if you let every single person decide what AI features you launch, where you launch it, you end up having you'll end up getting tiny features that are boiled down to like the lowest common denominator. But what we've done as an example is we've empowered a team, a data science leader, or an AI leader, a machine learning leader. We've empowered a product leader and an engineering leader to go work across all the different product areas and come back and say, and talk to the customers and come back and say, here is the end-to-end workflow, and here's how it should work in the new world. Everybody has the option to give feedback, but at the end of the day, they make the decisions, right? And they decide what the end to end is. Of course, they have to run it. Given how strategic this is, they have to run it by me, and we can have other people in the decision weighing in. But eventually, it is their decision. And then the way you hold them accountable is: did they do the thing? One is metrics. Did they drive? Did they drive the adoption? Did they drive the utilization? Did they drive? Are customers saying, is it valuable? And also, look, not every bet is going to be valuable. Was this thinking solid?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting dimension, like how high stakes something is that requires levels of escalation versus, hey, you should go run it.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think it comes down to your answer is it comes down to clear ownership of who owns the decision and metrics to measure them by. Because any one decision can be wrong, but if 60% of your decisions are wrong, then you have a problem.
I have to say, like Amazon they got those leadership principles right for a reason, and that one of them was leaders make they're most of the times they're right. Like they expect a certain volume of decisions to not be right, but for the most part, you need to be right because it's not just about just calling shots and expecting that something will stick.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I'm very curious about your org design as I hear you talk about these different functions and how you have a squad of people that are kind of more cross-functional. Like, how do you structure the team?
So I do have it structured by function because I believe to build the craft, right? You do have to have functional depth, right? And a stellar engineer is going to want to learn from a manager who's a stellar engineer who's going to want to learn from a manager. Same for product, right? So I do have it structured hardlined by org. But the virtual team, just like in any in and I think this is best practice, the virtual team that works on a given product is PM, design, engineering, uh, analytics slash like ML, depending on what's needed. And those they form a dedicated pod or a dedicated virtual team across each of the products, and then you make sure that that is aligned across the different functions. And they have a common mission. So you sort of create a mini, for lack of a better word, you create a mini. Uh, this is overused, but you create a mini C team for each product.
One of the unique things about your current role is you are Chief Product and Technology Officer.
Yep.
I'm starting to see more companies do that, but traditionally we would see a Chief Technology Officer that is a peer to the Chief Product Officer. So in practice for you, as you kind of wear both hats, what does that really mean for the way you structure the team?
Yeah, so I still structure by function below me, right? So you'll have 2 or 3 product leaders owning the top parts of the product. You'll have a design leader because I want someone to think about the product horizontally. So I have one design leader. And then right now I have one engineering leader, but I also go between models depending on where we are, go between multiple eng leaders, like each paired with one product person and then an infra leader, right? So I think which one you choose depends on where the needs of each function. Right now in engineering, the reason I have a singular leader is because we have to make a ton of trade-offs across a bunch of infra changes we have to make, or like not infra, but like product platform changes we have to make to enable data to flow more seamlessly for AI. However, if those changes were there, and we weren't going through this big change in the industry, then you could easily think about having a product leader. For example, we would have a small business product leader and a small business engineering leader. We would have an accountant product leader and accountant engineering leader. So you could move that. It just doesn't work for us right now. Right now, I have it organized by 2 key product leaders, 1 engineering leader, 1 design leader, 1 pricing leader, and 1 AI leader, and 1 security leader.
Yeah, I like how you're thinking about the org design as a product. We giving you yourself the option to also change the door in case something
Exactly.
be adjusted. I mean, I think what makes it even more intriguing here is that you are the part of your team is New Zealand, right? Or you have people in Europe. So it's a global team, but also it's also multi-product. So as I think about finance space or accounting software, I can imagine there is like very specific regulation that applies to different countries. So as you build a product that tends to be relatively structured for the core components, but it's still with flexibility across countries, like how are you building that way? Especially as you now start coming up against competitors that don't have that much to worry about, as they just focus on one product, one market.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, and something that requires platform thinking, right? So the first thing you do is you go off your products. What are the pieces that let me take something that most people understand. Uh, Invoices, the ability for a small business to send invoices and being able to get paid on that invoice. Okay. Now, when you break that down on the surface, it's like, okay, an invoice looks the same everywhere. But you know what? Not really. The invoice looks the same everywhere, but the way sales tax is calculated is different in every country, right? The way you actually calculate the rails that the payments gets processed on is different. Okay. On the other hand, yeah, the invoice does look the same. Everybody enters an item, everybody enters a cost, everybody enters a name of a customer. Everybody wants the button to for the end customer of that customer to click the pay button to be the same. Everybody wants all the stuff you do to get a user to pay is the same. All of that stuff. So what you have to do is you have to look at the product and go, what are the pieces that are common? And you build them common. And then what are the pieces that are very regional specific or country specific? And you have to have essentially country specific efforts for that. And the way you give the flexibility is through a properly designed API, a surface across the things that are common, right? So when you press the pay button, is there an API that you can ensure that it connects to the right payment processor in that country to get processed? So I think this is basic platform, like scale platform engine design, which is Can you design the common surfaces together as a service, and then can it have the right APIs, and then can you have region specific teams?
Yeah, you use the word basic because for you, obviously, you've done so many of that could come across as basic. It's clearly not, and
It's very. I didn't mean to say basic. I mean, this is it. Platform design by itself is very hard. Scaling product platforms is very, very hard. I didn't mean basic in from that
yeah,
perspective.
I take it with as a positive, like same thing. Sometimes like this is common sense. Well, it is not common sense. Like you've been thinking about the same kind of problems for a long enough period of time. You start seeing patterns, but like it's not that obvious for other folks, especially as you're trying to handle such a like what's the scale of the business in terms of the customers and the markets that you are serving?
Yeah, we're 4 million plus customers. We are markets we're global. We're across the globe, like every single market, like or most markets. So it's big.
Well, let's talk about AI, of course. Very curious about this topic. Obviously, we've all known that AI is going to change the world and whatnot, but like in your industry, I can imagine there are certain things that need to be 100% accurate. It's a highly regulated
Yes.
environment, right?
Yes.
And you definitely have a moat given the scale of your business compared to anyone who's trying to start from scratch. But at the same time, I can imagine that teams that are smaller that can move a little faster can take some of that market share. So very curious to know how you are approaching AI in a way that is advantageous to you.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So look, I think the big advantage to us is we have a Um, actually, believe it or not, I tried to start a business a startup in this area before I joined Xero for about 3 months, and I sort of realized there are two problems, and these are two advantages for us, and then I'll get to the stuff we have to manage. One advantage for us is we actually have a fully functioning product. So if you look at users, if you look at a startup has to go build a ledger, they have to build invoicing, they have to build payments, they have to build payroll, right? Before the startup can actually get a ton of customers, there's a lot to build, and we have that feature set already built mostly. Yes, we're making it better and we're launching more stuff, but we have it. The second, as you mentioned, is in the world of AI, data is gold, and for data, you need a set of customers, right? Like you need the more customers you have, the more up to a certain point, the better your AI can be. So that's the pros we have. The cons, as you see in our industry, is you have to be very, very accurate. And the way we've handled this is in two ways. Okay. One is our AI team is I have to say they're very, very smart, and they came up with this philosophy of when we launch new workflows and new models that are doing new things, we also launch guardrails, and these guardrails are I'd say they're more traditional guardrails. So, for example, the guardrail you would launch, let's say you want to calculate, you want an LLM to tell you what your cash flow is, right? You can also have an algorithm to calculate the cash flow. Doesn't have to just be AI. We will put guardrails that say if the answer is between X and Y returned from the LLM, then allow the answer to be surfaced. And if it's not, then don't allow the answer to be surfaced, right? So it's essentially ensuring that the LLM works within bounds, give or take. I'm making this
Yeah.
simplified, but we made sure that the LLMs work within bounds and that they're not allowed to return crazy answers, which is one of the ways we've historically guaranteed accuracy as these models are becoming better. The second thing we've done is anywhere where we actually automate something for you. So, for example, there's this concept called bank reconciliation in accounting, where you match the money in your bank with all your transactions that are stored in your accounting system to say, hey, did everyone pay me? Is my money matched in my bank equal to the money in my books, right? And that's how you close your books. This can be automated. However, what you do is you ensure that there is a workflow for the accountant to review this, and you make it easy for them to review this. So they don't have to go match everything, but they can eyeball the list of matches and go, oh, yeah, here's the data, here's why it matched, this makes sense. And if there is an error, they can catch it. right? Is kind of equivalent when you think about AI in software design and you think about all these copilots, etc., coming up. The job of AI is not to replace your knowledge or your understanding. The job of AI is to speed up how you do work. So an engineer, what does an engineer do? They use one of these things to actually write a bunch of code, but then they go evaluate the code, right? Like they go say, is the code actually working? Are there bugs? Is it going to do something nefarious? That's the philosophy we followed to ensure that we will automate for you, but we will also give you the visibility to check if the automation is correct and the data to check if the automation is correct, and then ensure that you can very quickly within that same workflow make adjustments.
Yeah, and I mean, I resonate with this as a product person, not as an accountant, because also like I know that there is a certain margin of error that I can tolerate, right? If the
Yes.
button is not exactly the color I want, maybe I can live with it,
Yeah.
right? So in a world of like yes or no, true or false, how do you create this type of guardrails or agents or other systems for, let's say, a user that's more like a bookkeeper, right? Like maybe less sophisticated than an engineer in terms of like training their own agent to make sure that they don't give up. Because I think that's also one of the challenges with AI, right? Someone would use, don't get that great experience first and like, whatever, I'll default to the ways of working that I know are good for me.
Exactly. And I think that's where you have to show the value. For us, I think the value, so you have to, I think people are worried about two things, right? Um, does this actually help me? And then do I have the control to correct anything that goes wrong? So it's both sides of that you have to take care of. You have to communicate the value. And we're saving people like 22 hours a month or more in a bunch of stuff, right? So that's like 4 hours a week. That's not 4 or 5 hours a week. That's not small already. And we've like probably in general scratched at the surface of what AI can do in the industry in general. But then you have to give them the control to go, yes, I I need to make sure that this is correct. And how do I quickly make sure this is correct?
I want to talk about agents and like what you call the super agent, right? Because
Yes.
as companies start deploying more and more as autonomous or semi-autonomous agents, it gets to a point where it's just very hard to maintain what is
Yes.
going on, right? So how
Yes.
do you go about orchestrating this in a way that is manageable?
This is a great point, and thank you for asking. So, I think the world is out there launching a bunch of agents, and they are launching agents in their existing experience, right? Um, we believe that with AI, two things will happen. One is you will need a super agent that can intelligently manage all these agents for you, and we call our super agent just Xero. Okay, so just as Xero, essentially, or Jax rather, essentially will manage your bank reconciliation agent. It'll manage your payroll agent. It'll manage your payment agent, right? And it'll orchestrate the right actions across and make sure that information is transferred across each of these agents and that they're not acting independently. It will also understand your preferences across the board. So, for example, you like to you like to do your bank reconciliation just when you've done your payroll, right? And that's your general workflow. So how do we ensure that that's done every time in an automated fashion for you, versus the agents picking up their own cadences? The second thing is a lot of people are just like slamming AI on top of their current UX experience, and I talked about this a little bit. But with AI, the experience of SaaS is going to change, right? How you interact with SaaS will change in two ways. Instead of SaaS becoming or apps becoming a place, SaaS apps becoming a place where you take action, SaaS apps will move more and more to a place where you are either reviewing or getting insights. And so, how does the UI paradigm change for that? That's number one. Number two, instead of clicking buttons all over the place, it's going to become a lot easier just to do things as you do in normal conversational language, right? So like, hey, Jax, what's my cash flow? What would you do in the past? You would actually go and be able to, you'd have to click a bunch of buttons, look at a report, look at like, hey, this is my cash flow right now. But now you can think about sending a text from your phone and going, hey, Jax, can you tell me my cash flow, right? So you can connect with a SaaS app across multiple surfaces. It just doesn't have to be within the app. And even when you're connecting within the app, it is really, your interaction paradigm becomes more human. So When I ask Jax, hey, what's my cash flow? As a human being, when I ask you as my accountant, what's my cash flow, you would tell me the number. But you could also, if I asked you, okay, what does this look like in the future? You would also like send me a slide with a presentation. Jax should be able to do the same. So I think that's how we're thinking about a financial super agent that goes across, but also is think of it as your junior employee that can help you run your business, both by providing insights, but also by automating the stuff you need to.
Yeah, and it also expands the use cases or the type of customers that would want to use your product. Like I can see myself, like I asked those questions, but I didn't want to log in into my accounting software
Exactly.
and mess up something that cannot be messed up with, right? Now
Exactly.
I can use English to
Exactly.
get that answer. If I have any question, I can even try. And if it gets to a point where I need help, at least I can pull someone. But like, I think this is something that wasn't even in any CEO's imagination before.
Exactly. Exactly.
We used to live in the world of freaking dashboards and people maintaining those dashboards that don't matter. And there's always more dashboards that need to be created.
Yeah, it was static. It was a system of record. How did you get the system in? And then how did you take actions to change the state of record? Now it's more about how does this how do these systems actually run independent, or these apps run independently, or these agents run independently? And then what is your interaction paradigm on top, which is much more human?
Yeah, that always my challenge with that is like, okay, I see the data, we all have eyes, but like, so what? Like, what is the
What does
actual
it mean?
interpretation of this? And then now what? What are we going to do about it? So we can move
Exactly.
a little faster.
Exactly. And just like, I mean, and that's what we launched financial insights. So like we try to put advisory in the pocket of everyone, right? Like with our financial insights products. So like the example we give is, let's say you're a bakery, right? And you deliver cakes, and you noticed your delivery demand has gone up, uh, and you're considering, hey, should I buy another van? And you're like, should I get another delivery vehicle, and should I hire someone? And you go to Jax and say, hey, I'm thinking of buying a delivery vehicle. It could be and do you think I should lease it or buy it, right? And Jax would be able to tell you, hey, by the way, it's May, summer's about to come, so your volume may go down, and you're better off doing it in August or September, because historically you've seen a spike then, and you've seen it in a downgrade then. It may also be able to tell you, hey, you're better off actually leasing the vehicle versus buying it, because here's your cash outlay, here's your and here's the outlay from a buying versus lease perspective, right? So you tell it what vehicle it's going to buy. It can go to the net, look for the vehicle, look at the regular lease prices, MSRP, all of that stuff.
So my understanding is with this super agent concept, it becomes your new UI, right? You go to, in your case, Jax, and under the hood, there might be other agents doing different actions, but ultimately you just interact with one, your super agent. Now, what if the information lives outside your own platform? Like, what is that opportunity for this type of super agent to integrate and be more of a thinking partner than just an FAQ?
Very interesting thing about an accounting system is that all your business transactions flow into an accounting system. Or sorry, all like an accounting system ends up becoming a system of record for a lot of things. So think about it. If you had a sale in your POS system, it flows through. If you have if you use Shopify, it flows in. If you have on the other side, let's say you use project management software, right? That eventually has to flow in to say, here's how much I earned on the project. So we already have a very robust an open ecosystem where we connect with all these apps and they feed data into us, right? Um, so Jax actually, if you think about a traditional SaaS software that does one action, they don't have the breadth of data coming in that we do. So Jax is already advantaged in being able to answer a lot of questions across your entire business by virtue of the fact that we are your ERP, and an ERP means we have a lot more data. The second thing that we're also opening up in Jax is now the ability for anyone to connect into Jax, or any app to connect into Jax and go, like, if you want to ask HubSpot a question, right? Like you want to go, hey, I can you remind me when I set this customer up? We won't have that, right, necessarily. Like, when did this customer become a customer? Um, uh, so other questions so that it becomes your one repository. Now, I'll say the flip side of it also, Carlos, which is I think it's both ways. People will want to interact with Xero, with other apps on Xero, and they'll want to interact with Xero uh, on other surfaces. So, like, one of the big um, discussions we were having with a small business is like, they're like, oh, it's a professional services business. They're lawyers, and they're like, oh, um, I um, I do Zoom with my clients. Or sorry, I do Teams with my clients, and they want to be able to go, hey, in Teams, can I actually, instead of going to opening up Xero, going to Jax, can I just go in Teams and say, hey, Xero, can you tell me how much this client owes me? Right? So I think it's going to go both ways. Information will flow from other apps into Jax, and I think we will make our information. We will allow other apps to query our like ChatGPT or Teams or Copilot to be able to query us, Gemini to be able to for people to be able to query us as well.
Totally. It makes so much sense, right? You mentioned the OpenAI, they have their new marketplace. I live on Slack or Microsoft Teams, right? So asking those type of questions there without having to log in. And I hope that MCP servers can help expedite that process so companies don't have to create this type of native API integrations all the time.
Exactly.
Cool. Well,
Absolutely.
I just have one last area I want to explore with you, which is SMB. I'm very
Yes.
curious about that. You've been in large enterprise, you've been in consumer. A lot of companies like to go up market at some point, right?
Yes.
So why would you make the intentional decision to stick within SMB?
You mean why did Xero make the intentional decision to stay with? Look, I think the reality is there is so much value to add. And I think the needs are very different in enterprise versus the needs of a small business. And when people say small business, it is like people define it very differently. For someone, an enterprise is like a $100 million company, and for some people, a small business is a one-person shop, right? So what we do is we serve customers from anywhere from 0 to 200, but our sweet spot is like 1 to 20 and 1 to 50, right? So I'd say the reason is because there are so many problems to solve, right? You can't do everything for everyone. And really, when you want to develop, innovative, industry-leading products that add value, and that you can make a business of, because at the end of the day, you have to get paid to be able to invest it in product development. You really need to understand the needs of your customer set. If you try to hit too many different segments of customers that have different needs, your product is going to be a hodgepodge, right? And we feel like there's a whole global market of SMBs. They power the economy. There are so many problems we can solve from them, from accounting, tax, in being able to get paid, paying people, their payroll, their scheduling. Like you could, the list could go on and on and on. Um, and there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I had the founder and CPO at Gusto on the pod like a year ago or so, and he's also like 100% on SMB. He's like, hey, we're only 8% of the market in the US. Like there is
Yes.
plenty of room to grow, and you are both multi-billion-dollar businesses. So the proof is there. But it's always interesting because for some reason there's this perception around, well, you need to sell to the Fortune 500. You need to move up market, right?
Well, look at it this way: Square, Shopify. There's a whole. I think companies choose the space they're in. I don't think you can build one product for the Fortune 500. Having done this at Okta, you can't build one product for the Fortune 1000, and it's the same product that works for like you and me. If you're like, well, you have your business, but like if I was going to try starting a business, because the small business customer is a hybrid of a consumer, and that's why I love this space, because it's like it's a hybrid of a consumer and a business, like an enterprise, right? Um, because they need the UI to be super simple to use. They need concepts to be super simple to use. They need X level of depth, but not at the cost of the ease of using the product. And at the same time, they're trying to make their business work, so they have all the workflow requirements and all the functionality requirements of an enterprise.
I mean, one of my takeaways from even this area of exploration is that in strategy is as important to define what you are going to do as it is to define what not and why. And that's okay. I think trying to cover too much ground or even trying to meet in the middle it's just not good strategy.
It's not good strategy, but your product will not work because the needs are different. You can't make one thing work for the needs of everyone. You could follow a strategy like some of our competitors have done, or one of our competitors have done, where they essentially have different products for different segments of customers. But then they're selling one product to different sets of customers, and we've decided to serve the need of our persona with multiple products, and that's the strategy.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you here
Thank you
and
so much
learn
for
more
having
about
me.
how you're building. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
your time.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.